Welcome to the Gridiron Central Preview Show, the Week 2 edition. We have a few games to talk about from last week. Joining me, as always, Matt Davis, the voice of high school football for 95.7 The Ridge. Matt? Oh, we did the explosion both times this week, so we got that down pat. A lot of interesting games last week, a whole lot of interesting games this week as well. Some ones that may not be close, some ones that probably will be close. We're just going to jump into it. We start off with the Battle of the A's at Daresville at Armurchie. Last week, the Tigers lost a close game to Cass. Last week, the Armurchie Indians lost a not-so-close game to Tryon. Going back to last year, Daresville won this game 55-0. This season, Daresville obviously the loss to Cass. I think both of us predicted Daresville would win last week. Cass probably a little bit improved from what we thought. I think Daresville's still a good team. Armurchie, not quite there yet. I think Daresville's going to win, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year. Matt, what do you think?
Kind of interesting here. When you look at what happened last year to start the season, Daresville lost a close game to Cass. Armurchie got beat pretty soundly by Tryon. If Yogi Berra were here, he'd probably say it's like deja vu all over again. It's setting up kind of just like last year. And you had mentioned that you feel like Daresville's still a very good team. I mean, you got Marcus Childers at quarterback. He can throw, he can run. He's a very good quarterback. He's got some experience. He's got weapons in the backfield galore, and Tristan Smith and Austin Harris. He's got some good receivers. This is a solid football team. Armurchie, on the other hand, again, they're a young team. We talked about that last week. A lot of sophomores on this team. They lost their quarterback right before the start of the season. This is a team, much like last year, is struggling to find themselves in the beginning of the season. Will they find some success this year? I don't have the answer to that, but I do feel like they're going to have a tough time against Daresville to try to find themselves in this game, because Daresville is going to put so much in terms of offense out on the field that it's going to be a tough game for Armurchie. So, again, I think this is going to be a lot like it was last year. I'm going with Daresville and feel very confident in that pick.
Gotcha. And, of course, these are both non-region games for both of these teams. I do believe Armurchie will be better this year, but it may be later in the year before you see that get over into the win column. Moving on, Dalton at Calhoun. Dalton opened the season 2 weeks ago with a triple overtime loss to Ringgold. Calhoun opened last Friday night, beating the pants off of Ridgeland. So they're 1-0 on the season. As of right now, Calhoun has a 48-game regular season winning streak. Dalton will be 49. Recent history in this series, Calhoun has won 4 straight and 5 of the last 6. However, remember, Dalton was the Class 4A football state champions. Of course, the difference here is that last year, the difference here is that football is the one we call soccer. If it was soccer, it'd still be a good game because Calhoun made the AA finals last year before losing to Westminster. It's not. It's American football, and Calhoun's they may not win big, but they're definitely going to win. Matt, what do you think?
A couple of things that stick out to me in this matchup. Last year, pretty close game between these two teams. Also, the season ended in the playoffs for Dalton last year by getting beat 35-13 to Sandy Creek. Sandy Creek is one of the best football teams I've ever seen. So to me, that's a respectable score for this team. They start the season, Dalton I'm talking about, by going 3 overtimes. They end up losing to Ringgold. I think they've proven right out of the gate that they're ready to compete this year. And so I think that makes this matchup really interesting. Calhoun last week, 37-0. They beat Ridgeland. I think most people thought that Ridgeland would suffer from attrition with Von Bell graduating. I forget the running back that
Daryl Bridges.
Yeah, exactly, not being there anymore. I don't think anybody expected that they would be quite where they are, and they were mistake-laden throughout that entire game. And, of course, the opportunistic Calhoun Yellow Jackets took advantage of it.
Yes.
They're ready to play every game, and that's one of the things that's unique about this Calhoun team, in that Hal Lamb and his coaching staff and the kids, they're always hungry for a win, no matter how many games they win.
Yes.
They remind me in that respect of Nick Saban in Alabama, because no matter what happens, I can't remember the last time I saw Calhoun come out into a game complacent. And so I think that'll be the case here. I think they're going to come out strong in the game. Their quarterback last week went 15 for 23, 192 yards and 2 scores. Despite the fact that he threw an interception, he's obviously picking up where Taylor Lamb left off. He may not be quite that good, but he's good. And so this team is strong. I'm going with Calhoun.
Yeah, definitely so. And I'll say something about Dalton is I'm not so sure Dalton's that good a team. They lost to Daresville in the preseason. Yes, they got beat by Ringgold. Ringgold might be a good team this year, but Ringgold didn't make the playoffs last year. So I'm not even sure Dalton's that good a team to begin with. Not to knock Dalton, but hey, you got to win on the field to prove you're any good. Moving on, Cedartown at Pepperell. Cedartown 1-0 on the season. Last week, won the Battle of Polk County, beating Rockmart fairly handily. Pepperell 0-1 on the season. Last week, they lost to Northwest Whitfield. Overall, the series 12-12-1, all knotted up. The last 5, Pepperell has a 3-2 advantage, or has won 3. Cedartown's 1-2. Cedartown, however, won last year 35-28. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
You know, I'm not sure about this game. Pepperell last year, they started the season by losing the first 3 games. And we said, last week going into the game that was going to take them a little while to find their identity. Cedartown, they proved in the game last week that they still have some struggles. And it took them some time to get rolling up against Rockmart. And then the Chubb show started. He went 330 yards on 24 carries and scored 4 times. Yeah. So I really just don't think defensively that Pepperell's going to have an answer to slow him down enough. And they're still trying to find themselves on offense. I just don't think Pepperell is quite where they want to be yet. It's a good thing that the first few games are non-region games because it's sort of like a preseason, getting things worked out, getting the kinks worked out before you move into region play. I do think Pepperell will have some success in AA this year. I also think that AA is going to be a lot more even this year. It's hard to tell beyond Calhoun where everything else is going to shake out. I mean, obvious because it's only the second week of the season, but there's been years in the past where you felt like you could make a more solid prediction than I think you can this year. So with that said, I think Pepperell will improve as the season goes on, but I think their struggles continue in this game. I think Cedartown is going to have a big game. And the key for Cedartown this year is going to be the same key that they had last year. They missed the playoffs last year, and without Chubb, they might not have won 2 or 3 games, maybe even. So Chubb, they're going to have to ride him pretty good in this game to have success. And I hate to see them use him too much and get him hurt before next year. But I think Chubb has a big game. I think they beat Pepperell.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you right here. I mean, for Pepperell to win this game, first off, they competed extremely well against Northwest Whitfield in the first half last week. Of course, one of those, they had a 6 or 7 minute drive that led to a touchdown. Northwest Whitfield gave them a very short field and a turnover. They were able to convert that. In the second half, Northwest Whitfield shut Pepperell's offense down. The Dragons could do nothing, and the Bruins offense took off, buried the Dragons. This week, obviously, if I'm Coach Shiflett, I have 3 guys watching Chubb, and wherever he goes, even if he goes to the bathroom, they're right behind him. I mean, everything he does, you got to watch, because if you can limit him to 180, 200 yards and keep Cedartown under 21 to 24 points, I think Pepperell has a chance to win this game. I think Pepperell's not a bad team. Offensively, you got to have that identity. You can't have turnovers. If Pepperell can limit turnovers, have a couple of long sustained drives, they have a chance here. However, I think Cedartown's about 10 points better. They win this game. Moving on, Heard County at Chattooga. Last week, Heard County 0-1 on the season. They lost to Allatoona.
Callaway.
I'm sorry, they lost to Callaway. You're right. Obviously, Allatoona is a 5-5-8 team, so they have to play within the region. Heard County lost to Callaway last week. Chattooga 0-1 on the season. They lost to East Hall pretty handily. Last year, Heard won this game 47-12. Chattooga obviously had a tough year last year, a tough start to the season this year. I think they're going to get better as time goes on. I'm not so sure you're going to see it that much better in the next couple of weeks once AA play starts September 20th. I think you will. I think Heard County wins this one just like last year. Matt?
This matchup raises a couple eyebrows for me, and the reason for that is last week, Heard County, as you mentioned, they got slammed by Callaway 34-0. Well, this time last year, we would have been talking about the fact that Heard County beat Callaway. And, this reminds me of a game that we had last week, Gordon Central and Coosa, because Gordon Central really beat Coosa up last year. Will Coosa turn around and return the favor this year? Yeah. That makes me think that Heard County has lost a lot of players since they got beat so badly. And I actually read a little bit about this game, and it just sounded like things went terrible for Heard County out of the gate, and Callaway just pounded them all night long. And so, this is going to be my upset special of the week. I think Chattooga is a team that's really still trying to find themselves, and this may be the knuckleheaded pick of the week. But I think this is going to be a close game, and I think that since they're playing at Chattooga, that Chattooga is going to find some way to beat this team that's going to be limping into the contest.
I think if they played this on the moon, it wouldn't matter. Point being, Chattooga got blasted by East Hall last week. I believe they actually lost worse this year than they did last year. Callaway is traditionally a very strong playoff team. Callaway was down last year. Yes, Heard County probably had a better team last year. All things being equal in this one, I still think Heard County is at least 17 points better than Chattooga. Obviously, I stick with Chattooga. Heard County. I'm right on this one. Matt will get his first miss for this week. Moving on, Rockmart at Coosa. Probably one of the more interesting games to pick. Rockmart, of course, they are 0-1. They lost to Cedartown last week. Coosa 1-0, kind of laid a beat down to Gordon Central. I was at that game. Coosa played extremely well. Coosa has lost 8 straight games to Rockmart. The last time they beat Rockmart, 2004. Last year, Rockmart won the game 28-13. I'll let Matt start off with this one. What do you think?
Well, this is one of those games I think is tough to call despite the fact that Coosa had so much success last week, because Rockmart had some success for the first 2.5 quarters of the game against Cedartown, and then things kind of fell apart for them. Of course, they were going up against one of the best running backs in the state, if not the whole country. So I think that factored in just a little bit. Rockmart, they've got some good playmakers on this team. As everybody always says about Rockmart, they're a team that always has athletes on the team. I mean, you're going to have a decent football, you got to have athletes, right? Coosa, they're a team that I think has proven right out of the gate that they're ready to play. And one of the things that I like about the situation with Coosa is they've had enough, turmoil over the last few years in terms of the way the season's turned out with high expectations and ended up with, pretty tough records, that I think that even though they picked up that big win, complacency is not going to be an issue, because these kids are super hungry. They really want to prove themselves, and I think they've got the right coach in place to help them do that, because I don't think he's going to let them become complacent at any stage of the season. And so for that reason, I think Coosa is going to win this game. They're playing at home. There's a new excitement for this team this year, and I just really think they're going to have that successful season that we thought they would have for the last several years.
Gotcha. This one's very difficult for me to pick. On the one hand, I saw Coosa last week. Defense looked good. Offense is coming into its own. Good running game. Passing game's has a chance to be good. Special teams look pretty solid as well. For Rockmart, the thing with, and as Matt says, Rockmart always has athletes. They always do. And Rockmart every year tends to put 2 or 3 games where they just show up and play lights out. On offense, Rockmart was running the option last week against Cedartown. That gave Cedartown problems in the first half. Obviously, when you're running up against an option football team that has good athletes, on defense, it's all about assignment football. Your defenders have got to play very solid football there. Coosa, could they get in a track meet with Rockmart? Yes, they could, and I think they could hang with them. That being said, after watching Coosa last week, Rockmart notoriously usually doesn't have good special teams as far as kicking goes. Coosa was able to put several touchbacks on kickoffs into the back of the end zone. I'm going to go with Coosa. I think this game will probably be a close game, but I think Coosa in the end will actually win and go to 2-0 on the season. After this commercial break from Georgia Northwestern Technical College, we'll be back to talk about 5 more games from Friday night.
Begin your future at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We offer degrees, diplomas, and certificates in over 200 programs of study. Choose a career in business, health, industrial, or public service. With the flexibility of day, evening, and online classes at any of our 5 campus locations, getting your education at GNTC has never been more convenient. There are many financial aid options available, including student loans. Apply now. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your college, your town, your future.
Welcome back to the show. We always like to thank our sponsor, Georgia Northwestern Technical College, for helping bring our Emmy-nominated high school football show to you. Of course, we are the longest-running newspaper-produced high school football show in the state of Georgia. Back to the action. Gordon Central at Southeast Whitfield. Gordon Central last week, of course, they are 0-1 this season. They lost to Coosa. Southeast Whitfield last week, they are 1-0. They beat North Murray. Last year, Gordon Central won this game 46-7. I think in this situation, you have teams that are kind of going in slightly different directions. Gordon Central lost a lot from last year. They're trying to rebuild. Southeast Whitfield has a lot back from last year. They're trying to be better. After seeing the game last week, I'm going to go with Southeast Whitfield on this one. I think Gordon Central is going to be able to compete, but they're awfully young, awfully inexperienced. I'm going to go with Southeast Whitfield. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think one thing that we learned about Gordon Central last week that I think a lot of people felt going in, because we all knew that they lost so many players and they were under a new head coach and that whole situation, is the fact that, a lot of teams that suffered defeat at the hands of Gordon Central last year, they're going to get their shot at revenge this year. And I think this is one of those cases. You described the game last year that was a blowout. Similar situation with Coosa last year as well. So I think you get more of the same in this game. Gordon Central trying to find themselves, trying to rebuild, and then Southeast Whitfield, who beat North Murray to start the season. They're going to be trying to build on the success that they've already had. And I'm not really sure what kind of a team North Murray has this year, but I saw them play last year, and offensively they had some pretty good players. They had some pretty heavy struggles on defense, but they're a type of team that can score some points. So I think Southeast Whitfield is heading in a good direction. Meanwhile, Gordon Central, they're just trying to find themselves. So I'm with you on this one. I think Southeast Whitfield is going to win.
Gotcha. Moving on, Lafayette traveling to Tryon. Lafayette's 0-0 in the season. They have not played yet. Their bye week actually came in the first week of the season. Tryon 1-0. They kind of laid a beat down to Armurchie last week. Last season, Tryon won this game 31-6. Lafayette only won one game last year. Overall, the series, Tryon leads 35-23. This is a very long-running series. Right up Highway 27 for these two schools, very close to each other. One's a AAA school, one's a single A school. Actually, I can't remember if Lafayette is AAA or Quad A. They always shift around on me. Tryon has won 9 of the last 11 games. Lafayette, during that span, got wins in 2011 and 2009. Obviously Lafayette's trying to build off of have a better year than last year. Tryon, looked awfully good last week against Armurchie. Granted, Armurchie only won one game last year. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs in this one. I think Tryon, much like Gordon Lee in Region 6A, they're both going to be very in the whole mix there for the region title because I think they're both solid teams. I go with Tryon in this one. Matt, what do you think?
One of the interesting things here to me is Lafayette is obviously showing that they're trying to build their program back. And one of the things that shows us that is the fact that they've got a brand new fancy field house. And, when a team starts doing that, they try to generate more interest in getting kids to, play football there and move things forward. And a lot of times you see those things be successful, but it takes time. And so maybe a few years down the road, that'll start to take place. But you had mentioned that Lafayette only won one game last year. The team that they beat didn't win any
heritage.
And so I'm sure Lafayette has made some strides and will be improved this year. But I don't know if they've improved enough to play against the team and be successful like Tryon that proved last year that they're a seriously good team. I mean, they did much better in the playoffs than I anticipated. There were times last year that I picked against Tryon that I really wished I hadn't, and it made me look like a knucklehead, like I look like often. And so I'm not going to pick against Tryon in this game. I think it's going to be kind of like the game was last year. I think Tryon's going to run away with it, personally.
Gotcha. Mount Pisgah Christian at Model. Model 1-0 in the season, beat Christian Heritage last week. Mount Pisgah 1-0 in the season, beat Mount Vernon last week. Last year, Mount Pisgah beat Model. This year, of course, the game is at Model. One key thing to note about Model, obviously Nakia Watkins gone for the year, torn ACL. So that obviously hurts Model. And in all honesty, that starts to make me, Model lost to Mount Pisgah last year. Mount Pisgah is not a bad single A school. Of course, Model's a double A school. This one is tough for me to pick because Model just, I don't know how good they're going to be. I think they're going to be right around what they were last year, 5-5, 6-4, 4-6, right around there. It's at Model. You know what? I'm going to go with the Blue Devils. I'm probably going to regret this, unfortunately, but I think Model might win. I think it's going to be a close game, but I will go with the Blue Devils. Matt?
Yeah, this one's interesting to me as well. The one question mark that I really have for Model, aside from what you just mentioned about the injured player, is the fact that they gave up 28 points last week. That would have me concerned because that shows me that the defense is not where they would hope it to be, at least at this stage of the season. Another interesting fact about this game for me is if Model gets past Mount Pisgah, I think it's a pretty solid. They're going to be 3-0 to start the season because they play Sonoraville next week. And the way things have gone Sonoraville, I'd be surprised looking at their schedule if they're able to win a single game all year. I think that's a pretty safe bet. But we'll have to see. I think the defense is going to have to step up and perform better in this game because Mount Pisgah got them last year. They're a pretty decent football team, not a great football team. And I think this is going to be one of those games to watch this week. But I'm going with Model 2. I've got a hunch on this one.
And obviously, we're a week away. I'm probably going to disagree with you there. Remember, Sonoraville beat Model last year. I was actually at that game, covering that game, and it might have been Sonoraville's only win of the season. That, of course, we'll talk about that game next week, but I'm not so sure that's a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. Moving on, Rome at Hiram. Rome 0-1 on the season, lost to South Paulding last week. Obviously, a very, very tough loss. Hiram 0-1 on the season. They lost to Paulding County. Last year, Rome won this game 21-0. Hiram all-time is winless against Rome, 0-5. Matt, what do you think?
Last week I picked Rome to win the game, and I was driving home from the Darlington-Cartersville game, and I'm going by Barron Stadium. I look over at the scoreboard to see what the score is, and I see 34-14 at halftime. Rome is down. They come back, they get a 1-point lead at one point, and they end up losing that game. So they showed some resiliency in the game. That's one of the positives that I would take away from it, because they were down so much and they were able to come back. But that was a game that I think most people thought they should have won to begin with. And that's a troublesome spot for them to be in right now, because, as we mentioned, in that particular region, every game is a region game. So they all have playoff implications from day one. So to lose that game, I think, was a pretty big deal for them. They better win this game. And as you mentioned, they've had success against Hiram. I just think they're a better football team. They're playing on the road. That always factors into varying degrees. But I think Rome's going to be really hungry after that loss last week, and I think they'll play well in this game and bounce back.
Yeah, I think so. Troubling aspects from Rome's loss last week. Number one, the defense gave up 40 points. When you're running the wing tee on offense, you cannot give up 40 points. Number two, the kicking game was not that great. After Van Riper graduated, they had some problems on the kicking game. Those have to be corrected. And something a friend of mine pointed out the other day to me, and I got 2 more points on this one, and I'll make them quick as I can, is that it's awfully difficult in Class 5A for your defense when they're practicing against the wing tee every day to then have to go out and play against offenses that run the spread option, offenses that pass the ball a lot, because that's not what Rome does. So a lot of times Rome's defense is put into very tough situations during game day, because it's awfully hard for them to simulate that at practice, considering they don't run that type of offense. And very few of the teams in Class 5A just run the ball like Rome does. So that's a tough one. I think Rome's defense is going to get better. Last point here is, at the start of the season, I said there are 4 key games Rome had to win if they wanted to win a region title, or they needed to win 3 of the 4. South Paulding, East Paulding, North Paulding, and Allatoona. Last week, North Paulding upset East Paulding. I don't know if it was that big of an upset, but it was. South Paulding beat Rome, knocking Rome into a position now of where they're going to have to beat at least 2 of those teams I just mentioned, if not 3, if they want to win a region title, and they're going to have to at least 1, if not 2 of those to get to the playoffs. So you can't afford losses to the Hirams, the Woodlands, the Lithia Springs, those people in the region. So Rome, not to put the panic mode, because it's not time to panic yet, but you can't lose again anytime soon. Moving on, and I'll say Rome does win this game. Sonoraville at Gilmer County. Sonoraville last week, 0-1, lost to Pickens. Gilmer 1-0, beat Fannin County. Gilmer won this game 31-0 last year. I'm going to say Gilmer wins this game again this year. Matt, what do you think?
Not a whole lot to say about this game. Sonoraville is obviously struggling out of the gate, and Gilmer. These are teams I don't get to see very often, so I can't really say a whole lot about them, other than the fact that looking at Gilmer won that game last year so handily. I just can't imagine that they've lost enough to be on the level that Sonoraville seems to be, at least at this point. So I'm going with Gilmer on this one.
Gotcha. One final game to talk about. This game is actually going to be played on Saturday. Unity travels to play Horizon Christian. Of course, they are both in the ICSGA, the Independent Christian Schools of Georgia and Alabama. Say that 3 times real fast. Unity on the season 1-1. Last week they lost to New Creation. Horizon 0-2 on the season. They have losses to Covenant and Young American Christian School, if I remember correctly, or is it Scholars? Anyway, one of those things. But in their 2 losses, Horizon Christian has given up 82 points and hasn't scored a point yet. Horizon Christian is in Unity's side of the region in the ICSGA, so for Unity, this is a must-win game. If you want to talk playoffs, you've got to beat Horizon Christian. That being said, Unity's offense is more than capable of doing it. Big question for Unity for me this season is defense. It's going to have to get better. You're going to have to start limiting teams under 21 points, basically. Unity's going to win this one game, probably running away. Matt, what do you think?
First week of the season, Unity gives up 35 points. Second week of the season, over 40 points. That's a major troubling situation for Joe Curtis and his team. And that was something that we talked about leading up to the season. This is a problem that he knew he had, and he hasn't found the answer for it just yet. And hopefully that will be the case as they go along. You're dealing with young men that they're trying to mold into football players here. As you mentioned, in terms of offense, Anderson Krieger, he's a pretty good quarterback, and he's been airing it out the first couple of the games of the year. They got a couple of good running backs, 2 wide receivers that are about 6'3", an offensive line that is just insane. You got your center that's over 300 pounds. In Roden, and then you got one guy that's 6'8", 280, big offensive line. I don't think anybody would expect to see that in an ICSGA team, and that's what you get with Unity. So I think they shouldn't have any problems in this game in terms of getting enough points to get past their opponent, Horizon Christian, but they've got to figure out something on defense, because they're not going to win any championships or make it to the playoffs even if
definitely. I mean, they can obviously get in a track meet with people, but you want to be able to limit people somewhere along the line. And, in all honesty, you don't want it to be where you have a turnover and that being the difference in the ball game because the other team always scores when they get the ball. That being said, I do believe Unity wins this game on Saturday. And, of course, Friday night, we'll have live scoring updates all night long. PrepCentralOnline.com. We'll have video coverage from the Cedartown Pepperell and the Dalton Calhoun games, along with articles and photos to go along with all of the region games. And, of course, Friday night, we close it all off with the Gridiron Central scoreboard, hot video highlights from our games, scores from all the games, and some analysis and commentary on what went right, what went wrong, and what to expect for the next week. For Kevin Myrick, my buddy Matt Davis, I'm Jim Allred saying we'll see you on the sidelines.
Begin your future at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We offer degrees, diplomas, and certificates in over 200 programs of study. Choose a career in business, health, industrial, or public service. With the flexibility of day, evening, and online classes at any of our 5 campus locations, getting your education at GNTC has never been more convenient. There are many financial aid options available, including student loans. Apply now. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your college, your town, your future.